Good morning, good afternoon, wherever this video finds you today, and welcome to another edition of CIONET Spotlight, where once a week we take a digital leader somewhere in the world and put them in the spotlight and have a conversation about all things digital. Today I'm delighted to welcome Gary Brantley from Beazer Homes in Atlanta, Georgia. Beazer is one of the largest home builders in America, indeed the world. They stamp out thousands of homes a year. And we're going to take a slightly different tack this week. We've got 30 minutes and, we hit the one anniversary now of COVID. But Gary is a world expert in smart cities. By way of background, let me just do a real quick intro. Gary grew up in Ohio, went to Youngstown State, got a degree in computer science, really wonderful career track. Started out as an engineer at IBM, then went into telecommunications with MCI, later ran IT for the state of Ohio, went down to Atlanta, ran DeKalb public school system. So the general Atlanta school system, was head of CIO and head of IT there, became CIO for the city of Atlanta. Those that were with us about 6 weeks ago remember Ty Hayes. Well, Gary was her predecessor running the city of Atlanta. And from that interview that when you run the city of Atlanta, you also run the world's largest airport as a side gig. So Gary's seen it all. He's been in many, many different industries. I think I did that intro. That was off of memory, Gary, but help me fill in the blanks on your background. What did I miss in that?
No, you did well, and Mark, I'm extremely excited to be here. But you did well. I do like to talk about this early on. I've also published my first book, which talks about transformation as well. So I did that last year. So that's
oh, great. Let's start there. Let's touch on that. What was the impetus of the book? And digital transformation is a big buzzword. So I missed that in the background. Tell us about the book a bit, and what's your unique angle on talking about transformation?
Yeah, I kind of pivoted from digital more so to organizational transformation. And one of the things that we always talk about, we talk a lot about digital and the adoption of the digital kind of transformational change that needs to happen. But one of the things I've seen is that you can have a digital transformation strategy, but the organization doesn't adopt it. So I really focused on the non-technical areas of transformation, which is relationships, culture, leveraging what you currently have already, knowing who the players are and how you need to advance your agenda. Those areas, I talked about a lot. So as a quick guide, 7 steps that I normally take when I'm trying to push the agenda of transformation.
Really interesting. On organizational transformation, I've had this analogy in my head as we shift from, let's call it the industrial age to the digital age. Yep. And a slightly controversial point of view, and I'd love to just kind of engage in this for a couple of minutes as we warm up and talk. I think industrial age organizations are full of a lot of smart people, but perhaps risk adverse. But they're full of smart people, no doubt. And I think the analogy I've been using is a sports analogy. And let's say the industrial age are full of football players, or as we say in Europe, gridiron. But they're great football players. And the question is, can you really turn them into world-class, say, basketball players, right? I mean, are they two different sports? Are they two different games where they're the industrial age and the digital age, which we've now been in this journey for roughly 25, 30 years? Is that a fair analogy to say, gee, if you're world-class at running industrial age companies, can you really retool and become world-class at running digital age companies? And I know that's kind of an off the cuff or unorchestrated question, but I challenge seeing large organizations do that around the world. Would you concur?
Yeah, I think you have to be extremely unique and in doing that and jumping into that way, like especially if you start talking about organizations, and we always used to use this as an example, like Blockbuster, right? Didn't advance to the digital age, stay more with, your traditional go to the store, get you a videotape and check it out, and all along, not having the ability to pivot. So I really think it starts with leadership.
Mm,
Number one, of course, we all say that word is a big but it really does matter having and being a part of organizations that are flexible in their thinking, agile in the way that they set up their organization in order to move forward. I think all of those play into your ability to shift and adjust. And I think also you need to, we talk a little bit about very diverse and inclusive organizations, right? Typically, we tend to look at skin color when we first talk about diversity, but it's bigger than that, right?
mm,
And so, if you have all types of people around the table who have been, like for an example, I've been public, private, local, state, right? And so you get to see a lot, and so you have a lot of experience to pull from, which allows you to help organizations make better decisions. So I think I think real diversified organizations, they probably do it pretty easy. I think those that are stuck in one way, not just in their practice, but in their in process, but in their hiring, I think that you end up struggling.
I a lot of respect. I had this mindset, right or wrong, but trying to do that organizational transformation in the public sector is more difficult than in the commercial sector. So, and you have a tremendous amount of public sector experience. So respect, man. That's huge. That's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah. Thank you. And to your point, yes, it is. I think in the public sector, you have a lot more. There are separate agendas across the board, and you have to cater to every single one of those in order to move forward. Sometimes it takes a lot longer, but I think the biggest challenge is finding commonalities between all of those different players that you can use to push your agenda forward versus walking into a private organization where most of the time the goals are set and they follow them, especially those that are generating revenue. So it's a different focus and feel.
Right. As I said at the outset, let's shift gears and talk about smart cities. You certainly have spent a lot of your time looking at this. I assume going back to your role in CIO of City of Atlanta, probably even before that, and that continues. Obviously, working with one of the world's largest home builders, it's an important topic. Just start by unpacking the. We've all heard the word. Probably few of us really understand it. Frame it for us. How should we think about the future of smart cities, and what's the potential? What's the vision? What's the ambition? How do we get there? When do we get there? How would you frame this conversation to people that are largely unaware?
Yeah, so it's kind of simple, right? We all we make up human beings of all different types of race, backgrounds, et cetera, make up a city in general, right? And so when you're looking at smart cities, we really tried to change the approach to that to really talk about like connected cities. So a lot of areas we were looking at is really the basic general things that we do on a day-to-day basis. How can we use technology to advance that, to simplify what we do, to provide better communication, across the ecosystem that you're in. But I think most importantly is really helping the underserved. And making sure that we're all on an equal playing field, because that typically is what distinguishes a successful city from one that really struggles. When you have cities that leave a certain population behind, they can't really take advantage of the technology that's in front of them. So one of the things that I think was a huge focus as we started to look at smart cities in a previous job was making sure that we put programs inside of our city that would allow the homeless population, those who are struggling financially, may not have access to everything that someone like you and I would. How can we get them involved? How can we communicate with them? How can we let them know the services that are available to them? Also, the broader aspect of it is looking at transportation, right? How to decrease, well, and we know COVID helped with that some, because Atlanta was horrible with transportation and traffic. And so how do you do that? How do you communicate? How do you build infrastructure that sets your city up for the long term? And what I mean by that is, public housing, affordable housing, putting infrastructure up under those so you have smart, affordable, and public housing. Those types of programs are instrumental to having a smart city. But I think the most important thing that I figured out with my team is that you have to have the right mix of players around the table that have a vested interest in moving the agenda forward. And that's both public and private. Right. And so my first act walking into, example, the city of Atlanta was establishing a CIO advisory board that was a mix of all the big companies in the city of Atlanta that had the same affection and affinity for what was happening. And we could look at what we want to see what do we want to see? What agenda do we want to drive? And let's move forward. And so the focus was always back to basics. So we went back to, hey, do we even have the operational foundation to do some of the things that we want to do? When big companies come here, can they connect? Are we providing safety across the board? Are we doing it in a smart way? And so when you look at smart cities, some people get caught up in the glitz and the glam but you really have to handle the foundational units first. Safety, traffic, communication, all of those areas are extremely important.
So foundationally, it sounds like a lot of digitization of standard services. Forget the glitz for a moment. Let's call that, a later phase. But the initial phase is the safety, serving the underserved, and just providing those digital services in probably some pretty novel ways, given they may not have access to technology or, there's affordability issues. But how do you very cleverly digitize and distribute those services to level the playing field? That sounds like the foundation.
That's the foundation, and partnerships with organizations like Google, Microsoft, to get those done. I remember sitting in having a conversation with, I think, one of the presidents from Microsoft, and we were talking, on a dime, switch the subject to, skill set, right? I want programs in the city of Atlanta that allow our underserved population to walk away with a credible skill set, whether it's engineer, cloud engineer, software. These are the type of and we need to bring those programs to them. I think it starts with those types of programs, and so that was a huge focus. So yeah.
That's great. And then the glitz and the glam. We hear about Dubai and we hear about Barcelona and a lot of these big international cities, which prior to COVID you visited and checked out. Yep. What's the sexy glitz and glam a decade out that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, when you start looking at autonomous vehicles, ramping that up, I think is something that we've been focusing on, especially when you look at other countries, because, and I think still today a part of some consortiums that are out of the city and also the U.S. And so I think, when you start looking at that, automation is huge, providing digital communication services across the city that provide, your population with the information that they need to know. I think affordable and ironically work for Beazer Homes, but providing affordable, energy efficient type network ready homes as well, not just for those who can afford, to pay a lot of money for that, but your average, what I would call a consumer, if
Right.
you're using the word right. And so I think when you start looking at autonomous vehicles was big, integration into traffic lights is huge. Really having your car integrate with it. I think that was one. So that would be like preemption, right? Services for public safety, meaning that when you go through a red light, giving those vehicles the ability to change the lights and to control the flow of traffic to provide safety services a lot more efficiently. So those types of programs, I think you'll start to see, and you're starting to see across the U.S. But this is the last point I'll say on this: data, right? Analytics, using data, really taking data. I think cities have huge pockets of data, but they're not specifically or necessarily in a place where they can bring all of that together to really make informed decisions. And so really having platforms where you can take what's happening with streets that are being tore up with potholes from water main breaks and all of the maintenance that's going on it, and then maybe tie that to crime, and then tie that to public works and safety, all of those areas. Once you get that data, and you can really start to see what's really going on in your city. And I think that's the next evolution as we move forward.
Yeah, got it. Now, you think of these smart cities and you build up that platform and you serve the underprivileged and you've digitized all these city services. I think it's pretty easy to see, the transportation implications, talk about autonomous vehicles, the tie-ins with other, public transportation systems, emergency services. Those are pretty obvious. Are there other industries that have begun to think and maybe a bit of creativity here, but how does financial services plug into, a smart city, or how does retail plug into a smart city? Or are there other interesting industry use cases where I can just kind of snap on my industry or my company into this, into this broader thing called a smart city? And is that a trend that we're going to see develop in the next 5 years? Because we have listeners from many, many different industries right now. And they're saying, what does a smart city mean to me? I'm in retail. Or what does a smart city mean to me? I'm in financial services.
Yep. So think about this, right? Think about how many of the underserved population don't have banking accounts, don't have debit cards, don't have credit cards. I remember vividly having conversations with the individuals with MasterCard, really trying to use the financial services industry to really be able to provide those types of services to the homeless population, and those who just don't have it. And I think when you start to look at that, that's one. When we talked about vehicle preemption, right? One of the things that we also talked about is having other organizations be able to take advantage of that to be able to provide revenue back to the city. So what does that mean? Hey, if I'm an organization like NCR and I'm backed up in traffic and I can opt into a vehicle preemption where all of my employees can go from work straight to the interstate without catching any lights or traffic, is that attractive to you? And so when you start to look at those types of programs that are going on, it absolutely is a place. When you start looking at the automotive industry and having companies like Ford be able to have their cars connect to the actual traffic lights to be able to know when the actual light is about to change red and green. And so it's little things like that. How many times have you been in a situation where you've seen a light turn green, or you thought it turned green, you hit the gas and rear-ended somebody in turn? I've almost done that. a few times. And so really having that communication back to the vehicle, from a lot of the city infrastructure is also helpful as well. So I think that's key.
And these smart cities are going to expose, and they're going to expose APIs and expose services that will be in the future much more easy to consume. So it's really left to the imagination of these industries to figure out how they're going to plug on top.
Yep, and that was extremely important as to why that advisory committee had executives from Delta, executives from Equifax, the Southern Company, all of the big major Cox Communications, all of their executives were sitting on that board, along with Georgia Tech CIOs and Georgia State CIOs, to really find that synergy with the cities, the universities, the private companies, and the public companies. And so I think once you get everybody in the room and you start talking about what it is that you would like to see and need, then you start to form a plan and a pathway forward.
So future of the smart home. Let's pivot over to Beazer Homes for a bit here. Yep. What happens with AI, with 3D technology, with 3D printing? What does the future of our home look like? What does the future of our residents look like when you really look 5 years out? Where are things headed?
Well, I think with Beazer, I think they've been a great player in the space from a technology perspective. I'll give you an example. I think maybe the only home builder that has a program called Network Ready, right? And what that means is typically when you move into a new home, you're going to get the Cat 5 or Cat 6 cabling all through the house. You're going to have, it's going to be like network ready internally. But one of the things that's always missing is it takes weeks, sometimes months, for you to actually get network connectivity. And so Beazer is offering that day one, right? Day one, just like your water, your gas, your electricity. You can walk in when you purchase, for new homeowners, when you purchase your home, you will have internet access available to you that day. And so that is something that I think from a communication perspective, it's kind of shows you the way Beazer is thinking. Also, when you start talking about energy efficient homes and, you start talking about vehicles that are electric and all of those things, building energy efficient homes is key and critical to, like, if you have a Tesla or a car that's even, that's completely electric, you want to be able to not have this skyrocketing electric bill because you're charging your vehicle in your home. And so I think Beazer makes very efficient, very affordable, and in a lot of cases, extraordinary homes that give a lot of individuals choice. And I think when you start really talking about what's next for Beazer, it's choice. We want our customers to have a choice for a great value. And when you really start to look at that, I think that is what is going to separate us as we move forward. I think when you talk about 3D printing and augmented reality, being able to show homes that way, being able to get a like and feel of a home from a computer, the same almost, creating that same feel as if you were there in person. Really being able to take, how many times have you gone to a home and you constantly, you might take pictures and then you got to go back and look at all those pictures or pull from the memory bank. How great would it be to be able to really have that same experience sitting right in front of a computer? And so those are things that we're working on and things that in some cases are in place right now. So
over the last year, as we're in month 13, I guess, of COVID now. Have the assumptions that run the business changed, right? Where you build homes, the type of homes you build. I mean, it looks like people are starting to spread out in this hybrid environment. I don't have to be in, 5 days a week. Maybe it's only 2 or 3. Therefore, I can move further out. And a lot more home working means the configuration of that home's going to be different. I mean, I would assume that some of the fundamental business decisions that run that business have been upturned in the last year, and you're going to be doing things differently. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think, as our CEO has said, who's just an awesome guy, great, smart, intelligent guy. He talks about how profound the transformation was. I think the biggest piece with Beazer was opening up communication lines between our suppliers, our trade partners, making sure not that we could communicate internally as well with our teams. I think the communication portion of it was a huge focus, and I think we've done a really good job. I think the demand right now is out of sight and mind. I mean, it's excellent, at the current moment, and we pray that it stays that way. But people want more space. They want unique spaces, and so I think this has been a I think we learned that we can be just as effective in this posture the same way we were face to face, and in a lot of cases more efficient through the use of technology. So I absolutely agree with you.
And are smart homes being designed to literally plug and play on top of smart cities? I mean, that you've seen both sides of that equation now. I assume that you've got some insight or some knowledge that smart homes are going to plug into smart cities like Legos or something almost.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're sitting. You want to be able to sit these homes on fiber infrastructure. That's what you want. You want to build on, and because it's only going to increase when you start to look at the demand, even from the appliances that are going into the house. Everything from coffee makers to refrigerators are acting as these smart devices. And in my opinion, that also makes up like what we would call a smart city. And so, that is when you really start to look at where we're going and what we're doing. I think we have a concerted effort on energy efficiency. Those are foundational blocks that you need to be able to do or add a lot of the bells and whistles that we like to have in our home. So yes, I think that having that foundation is what Beazer is focused on.
Where we got time for two last questions here. One's kind of a smart cities question. One's that nugget question I always end on. I talk to you about. But if you look at all these cities around the world, it feels like when you talk about smart cities, they're kind of at two levels. One are existing big cities where you've got you've got a century of legacy, and you've got to build for the underserved. You got to digitize existing things, and then we hear about something like Dubai or other new cities where Dubai's pretty new. It's only 30 years old, effectively, right? But other new cities where it's a green field and you just go out and build a bunch of new stuff. I think I'm more interested in the former. I think, our listeners today, like what big city or what are a couple big cities that really are dealing well with that legacy problem, that underprivileged problem, where they've got the policy and the budget and the, dare I say, the political will to go get this right. Now, clearly Atlanta's gotten this right, but outside of Atlanta, even global cities, where should we look where big cities have really nailed this or begun to nail this?
Yeah, when you start to look out of the U.S., I would say Amsterdam for sure. If you take a look at Amsterdam and what they're doing, and they have some old legacy infrastructure that they're dealing with. As a matter of fact, I think I was reading an article where things were sinking, and so I think that they've done an outstanding job of reimagining themselves and really putting them on the forefront of innovation and technology. I think that we can just start with the airport. It's outstanding. To me, it's one of the airports I talk about a lot that I think is one of the best kept secrets, about Amsterdam. But I also think that they have a true roadmap and plan on how to update this legacy and old dated infrastructure to move forward. And I think that's also one of the biggest challenges with the US. When you go over to places like Vietnam, which I've been, right, they just start straight. They don't have to tear down and all of this old infrastructure and figure out how to make that connection. I mean, they're just, like you said, they're just building. If we looked at a city in the US that I watch and that I pay attention to, is San Jose. I pay a lot of attention to San Jose. I think their transformation has been pretty amazing. Of course, it's easy to say that because it's kind of like it was considered like the tech capital of the world. But I think from the city side of things, I think they have done an outstanding job leveraging what's been available to them. And I think if you want to keep an eye on the city, I think you need to keep an eye on San Jose as far as leading the way outside of Atlanta, leading the way for our smart city and what we call connected agenda.
Wonderful. That was not a prompted answer. I lived both in San Jose and Amsterdam, so that's a wonderful answer. Hey, last one. We'll end this real quick. Your nugget, your takeaway. What's the tool in your pocket as a digital leader that you can pull out and use? Maybe it's a unique tool or process or methodology or mindset, but something other listeners can learn from today.
Yeah, I say this, and I talk about it in my book too. I think the most important thing that I look at is I really try to learn and understand the business. I take IT completely out of it. I need to understand how we operate in finance, how we operate with our customers, how we operate internally. I think if you can understand how your organization operates, you can be extremely valuable and successful. And I've had to learn several industries, and there's a method to that, and a lot of it is your strategy on how you engage and navigate through the organization to learn specific areas. So that's what that would be my nugget is for everyone today.
Wonderful. Yeah, I wish, boy, 30 minutes goes fast. I wish we had more time. The questions are starting to come in hot and heated. We didn't get a touch on residential battery technology or smart metering or all this cool stuff. Please go find Gary's book. We'll put a plug in for that as well when we post this. Gary, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Went fast. We might have to do part 2. That was really exciting.
No problem. Yeah, that was exciting, and thank you all. You, Mark, and Lisa and the team. She's been outstanding, and so it was a privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Great. Thanks all. See you next week, same time.
Okay. Thanks.